Okay, so here we are back on the Union Pacific Station project, and I've made quite a bit of progress since our last episode. The main things I've done, first of all, is I've assembled all the windows and doors. As you can see here, they're all in place, all around the structure. There's the freight door. There's the windows on the street side of the station and the door. And there's the windows on the waiting room side, the passenger side of the station. Now this building the windows is a very slow, time-consuming process, and you can't hurry it. You need to take your time with it because each window is made up of between 5 and 8 parts, and they're very delicate. As you can see, all these, let me get my little pointer here, all these mullions and all the windows are very small. Okay, they're very to scale. That's one of the nice things about the laser kits is everything is done as close to actual scale as possible, which is hard to do with plastic kits. And because you're using real wood and they're imitating a wood, they're modeling a wood structure, it has very much the same look, although scaled down. It's a very fine-grained wood. It's plywood. Now, one of the things here that notice is that when you put all these in, you have to press fit them in. Okay, and the adhesive on the frame is meant to hold them in. And the tension on the glass on the windows sometimes can cause a little bit of buckling, so you need to work with that. And one of the things that I do is the glass panes they give you, the very small plastic that's supposed to be glass panes, if I can show in here, go on the back side. This is all self-adhesive. All these tiny parts have adhesive on their back side, so you build up each window in layers. It takes about a half hour or so, possibly longer, to build up a window, depending on the complexity of it. So the windows and the doors are the same way. They're multi-layers of adhesive material, or adhesive back material, very, very thin plywood, thinner than a 32nd of an inch. And you have to take your time doing that. And when you put them in, oftentimes this glass, this scale plastic actually, but it's made to look like glass, that gets a little bit of a buckle in it or doesn't exactly adhere. So what you have to do is go in here. What I do is I get my old friend Franklin Tight Bond glue, carpenter's glue, and a fine wire, like a section of piano wire like this, and I'll make a little puddle of the glue on the workspace, on a paper towel or a piece of cardboard, and then go in and lightly touch. You just want to put a small drop of the glue on each side of the glass out of the visible portion, and it's semi-viscous, so it'll draw it a little bit into that crease, and it helps to hold the glass in place. That's just a little trick that I learned. The same thing that I had to do here on various parts of the trim too, around some of the portions of trim to help hold it down. Now you'll notice like over here there's a little bit of green paint that bled from my earlier painting. One thing I'm going to have to do when I get to a certain point here, I'm not at that point yet, is go around with a very, very fine brush, very small brush, and white acrylic paint, because I've already touched up the green, and make touch-up marks here, because you can see there's a little bit of unevenness. One of the other things I've had to do in building this is to go in after the glass is in and after it's good and stable, is to take one of my trusty dental picks and go in here and just lightly drag here to get these little bits of imperfections along the windows out. Just use a very light touch and it squares up nicely. It looks very nice when you get done. The same with the trim on the doors. Now, as far as the general painting, this is supposed to be a model of a station that was painted in this paint scheme in the late mid-60s. And my model railroad is set in 1985, 1995. Now, these stations were not used for passenger or even freight purposes much past the 1960s. But as I said in the earlier earlier episode, the Union Pacific continues to use a lot of them as maintenance bases for maintenance crews. So they're basically, you might call them glorified storage sheds, temporary offices, this kind of thing. So they've received some maintenance, but they're starting to get a little bit shabby outside, and that's one of the things I'm going to recreate with some of my painting on here. You'll see a little bit of fading, see a little bit of warped wood, maybe even some exposed wood, because the railroads are not going to put a huge amount of expense into upkeep in these places, just as long as they're good enough for their maintenance purposes and maintenance facilities. So this is where we are with the outer shell. Now, one other thing you'll notice here, I put in all these roof supports. You can see these eave supports along here. all around the station. That's one of the nice features, the architectural features about these stations that I really like. They have these very interesting, very delicate, in the HO scale, very delicate roof supports, and I had to glue all them on. And that's preparatory to putting the roof on the structure, and I'll have to finally align some of them. I noticed I'm a little bit off on some of my alignment. Now, when it comes to the roof, the other thing I've done is I've assembled the roof per the instructions, and this is what the roof looks like, minus the portion that's going to go out over the bay window area for the dispatcher's office. That's this cutout right here. Now this is not the roof that you'll see when the structure is done. This is the subroof we're looking at. And you can see that there's a couple of cutouts here for the chimneys that go in. And you can see here's this tab and slot construction. And you can see how on the inside it's used to stiffen the roof, give it dimensional stability. Also, the neat feature I've added to the roof is notice these end decorations here. That's one of the other interesting features about the Union Pacific Depot that I really like. Little architectural decoration and stuff. It looks really nice. And you'll notice on the end walls here, there are these tabs. Let's turn around here so you can see it. These tabs right here, and down here, and down here. They will fit in these slots in the roof, and that's why this tab and slot construction. And that brings up a really good point. I mentioned in the first episode about the Union Pacific station model that these are laser cut points, and one of the parts and one of the hallmarks of these kits is that everything is cut very precisely. That's the nice thing about them. Everything goes together exactly as it's supposed to fit. But you have to keep in mind that painting is actually going to add some minute amount of thickness to these parts. So when you put it together, you always have to be very careful that, for example, when I did the first test fit of this roof, and to try to fit it on here, I realized, of course, yes, the painting had added some thickness here, and actually some paint had gotten down in here. So you have to clean out these slots, and then what I'm going to have to do here is to clean off the paint off of these outside and inside edges, not down to where it's invisible portion, but this portion of the tab right here will be up in the roof and not visible, so that the parts will fit together. Now, one of the things I want to do is possibly leave this roof as a press fit on the structure, but not as a glued down fit, because I still have in my mind the possibility of going in and doing some interior detail in this area right here, which would be the maintenance crew offices, which is visible through the bay windows and maybe over into here, to show some desks and work areas and supplies. I may do that. So I want to be able to get the roof off, because I will wire LEDs, miniature LEDs into the roof that'll power off of 12 volts to light up the interior of the structure. Now, as far as the roof goes, actually making the roof, this is going to be interesting. This is a new challenging approach. And this I'm glad I did the Ellington store model first before doing this, because as far as the laser kits go, this is even more intricate than the Ellington store. So I learned a lot of tricks in doing the first one. And if you're interested, and I really do recommend you try a laser kit, because I think that they're really enjoyable. Building them you get quite a sense of accomplishment, and you get a really nice looking model when it's done. But it's a process that you have to take step by step, read very carefully, always read ahead in the instructions, and read the whole instruction book before you start, so you'll know where you're going with the various parts, and you'll know what goes where, so you get the sense of how these things go together. But you start with some of their simpler kits, like a little maintenance shed or something like that, and they have some of those in the $20, $25 range, and they're really good to start with. Now, as far as the roof itself, notice this is, as I said, the subroof, but there are these lines on here. And these lines are registration lines to line up your shingles. And they give you 2 sheets right here of shingles. Now, these don't look a lot like shingles, but they're strips cut with adhesive on the back. And when it comes to making this roof, one of the things I'll be doing here very shortly, and hopefully I'll have it done in time for the next episode, is I have to take this is 1 strip of shingles right here, take 1 strip and line up the top edge of it with this first line that you see on the roof. That's a registration line, and it'll go right along there. It'll line up. And then I'll take the next strip of shingles and line it up with this line, but offset by half, because shingles are staggered. The lines for each shingle go halfway across to another shingle, so it'll be staggered almost, the same way that we stagger bricks when we lay them on the wall. And this will be the next step I'll be getting to, I think, here shortly. And hopefully I'll have something to show you at the next episode in the roof. Now, one of the other challenges I need to mention about the roof is that these are unpainted. And you don't want to paint them before you put them on the roof, okay? Because you can get material properties, like they can start to lose adhesive or warp. And one of the things I still have to figure out, and a lot of this is experimentation, is how exactly I'm going to paint these shingles. Because if you'll notice by this illustration here, I hope you can see it online, that the roof is a gray asphalt shingle, composition shingle, but it has, again, a slight greenish tint to it. And I found in the historical record that Union Pacific painting instructions were to use dark gray asphalt shingle, but then they hit it with a Kentucky green wash. So I'm going to have to color these shingles twice, base color and then a slight wash color, and I'm thinking of using pastels, powdered pastels, and brushing them on and then sealing it with clear acrylic spray. So we'll see how that works. So that's the current progress on Union Pacific Station project, and hope you enjoy it. See you next time. Okay, I just wanted to add a brief word at the conclusion of this episode, now that we're 6, 7 episodes into this. It's been a really interesting experience, and I really appreciate the fact that it seems to be a lot of people are watching this, and I'm getting a fair amount of comments back. And I didn't think it would elicit that much response, but I really appreciate it. And just to make a bit of a confession, it's been good therapy for me. I said when I started this that with the present situation we're in, with the isolation and the threat of losing social contact, that it kind of just came into my head to do something like this, and with the hope that somebody would find it interesting or amusing. And but I'm just very pleased with that. I probably haven't answered a lot of comments about it, but I just wanted everybody to know that I appreciate the fact that you appreciate something I appreciate, and that's even as quirky as this whole thing is of grown men playing with trains. But it's a fun hobby. And oh, by the way, too, also a couple weeks ago I passed my 73rd birthday, and it occurred to me that you are seeing me now with hair that is longer than I have ever had in my entire life, by a substantial margin. For much of my life I had to wear my hair pretty expression high and tight, being in the military and everything, and this is an interesting experience along with everything else. So as we go along in this, you'll probably see me get woollier and woollier. And although I have, by great encouragement from Kathy, trimmed my eyebrows because I was starting to look like Wolfman or something like that. But anyway, so thank you for taking an interest in this, and thank you for your comments. And I hope you continue to enjoy my offerings on this little adventure with trains, with railroads.